Isaiah 9, 2 through 7. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. You have multiplied the nation, you have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as people exult when dividing plunder. For the yoke of their burden and the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor you have broken as on the day of Midian. For all the boots of the tramping warriors and all the garments rolled in blood shall be burned as fuel for the fire. For a child has been born for us, a son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His authority shall grow continually, and there shall be endless peace for the throne of David and his kingdom. He will establish and uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time onward and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this.
Brianne and I have had this ongoing issue that comes around every Advent season, and I'm talking every Advent season. And it has to do with the order in which we deal with the themes of Advent, which is hope, peace, love, and joy. The one thing that we agree on, the one thing that we can come to a consensus about is that the third Sunday is Pink Candle Day. We know that. Pink Candle Day is the third Sunday in Advent. Where we don't always agree is whether this third Sunday is Joy Sunday or whether it's Love Sunday. Now, when there is a disagreement, typically the person who makes the proclamation is the one who thinks they're right. But that's not the case with Brianne and I. We have some self-doubt when it comes to that, because I'm thinking, well, Brianne, she's the administrative assistant, and she researches things meticulously and thoroughly, so maybe she's right. And she's thinking, well, he's the pastor. He should know things like this, so maybe he's right. And for some reason, we think that we can always solve this problem by looking up in the storage closet in the bell tower and look at the Advent banners that we hang up in the flags that we hang up in the sanctuary here, because they say peace, hope, and love and joy. And we think, well, the pink banner is going to be the one that's going to tell us what it is. But the thing is all four flags are purple. And we forget about this. We forget that the flags are purple, but every year we end up doing it and looking at those banners. And you would think that after 12 years that we would remember this, but every year when I give her the preaching schedule, she says, "Are you sure the third Sunday in Advent is joy or love?" And I'll say, well, the lectionary website that I use says that it is Love Sunday. And then she'll say, well, the calendar that we get from our denomination's general office says that it's Joy Sunday or Love Sunday, whichever it is. And the problem is both resources, both the calendar and the lectionary website that I go on to, they both agree about the scripture for the week, but whether it's love or joy always seems like it's up in the air. So this year, we thought we messed up again, because the calendar said it was Joy Sunday, but Andra's Advent program that we've been using this year says that it is Love Sunday. We even had it listed as Joy Sunday in the collar. So When I read Andra's notes on this week's lesson, here's what she wrote. The third week of Advent is Gaudete Sunday, where churches either celebrate joy or love, using the pink candle for churches who use an Advent wreath. And I thought, yes, because I love it that Brianne and I were both right. Because we know it's Pink Candle Sunday. There is no question about it. It is Pink Candle Sunday. But what we didn't know was that it was Gaudete Sunday, which neither one of us had ever heard of. And it doesn't matter. So, for our intents and purposes this week, we will be focusing on love. We said from the very beginning of this season that Advent is going to look a little different this year. And I'm pretty sure that when we took the banners and the tree and all the decorations down after Epiphany last year, no one would have thought about whether we would even bring them down again this year. Why would we think that? We bring them down every year. But then March happened. COVID happened. And remember back in March when we first went on this shelter-in-place thing? It was a bummer. We thought it was a bummer. It was an inconvenience, but we had this thought that, it's not going to last that long. We will be able to come back together for Easter. And then after Easter passed, we thought, for sure, we'll have Pentecost in the park because the Chico sun will come along and just bake this virus out of the air altogether and everything's going to be okay and we'll be able to meet for Pentecost in the park. And then the summer moved along and we thought, World Communion Sunday? And that didn't happen. So we finally said, we'll definitely be back in the sanctuary by Advent and Christmas. And yet, here we are. This season has been unexpected, to say the least. And thus, our focus remains centered in the prophets, speaking to us from times of pain, of loss, of disappointment, and of chaos. The prophet Isaiah was certainly familiar with those kind of feelings. Isaiah's world was being upended by a group, the Assyrians, who were determined to take over the world at that time. And meanwhile, ancient Israel had suffered long and hard. They were scattered. They were unsure if there was ever going to be a normal again, right? Ever felt like that? What the pandemic has taught so many of us is that many of the norms that we hold on to were fleeting, useless, and honestly a bit finicky. Because think about it. We think, oh no, we're in the purple zone. That means widespread. That's not good. And then it was, oh yay, we're down to red. We're down in the red zone. That means substantial, but some businesses can open up again and we can start thinking about going back to in-person school and we can worship inside if we choose, so long as our numbers don't go over 25% of the room's capacity. And then it was finally, thank goodness, we are down to orange, which means moderate. We still have to limit the number of people that we have in worship, but my gosh, restaurants, right? We can actually go out to eat again at restaurants and maybe even get our hair cut. But then all of a sudden it was, oh no, we're back up in the purple again. We've bypassed red altogether. And now we're on super purple. We're shutting everything down. We're getting how many people got alerts on their cell phone on Saturday? Just kind of out of the blue. There's this alert saying, this is bad, folks. Stay home. And all the while, we're thinking, why us? My gosh, we're just little bitty Chico. It's not like we're some big urban place like San Francisco or Los Angeles or something like that. What's going on here? But it's easy to stay focused in our own little corner of the universe where me, mine, us rules our thoughts, our plans, our agenda, our desires, our choice. And I know that Andres started out our scripture this morning at the beginning of Isaiah 9, but what I want to do is I want to go back a few paragraphs to Isaiah 8. The New Revised Standard that she read from in chapter 8 says, they will turn their faces upwards, or will look to the earth, but will see only distress and darkness, the gloom of anguish, and they will be thrust into thick darkness. I love the way Eugene Peters, the Message, phrases it. It says, they end up in the dark with nothing. It's important to reflect on where we've been and where we are in order to really grasp this gift that's coming our way. Because without centering ourselves in where we have been, it's hard to imagine that God's going to show up with restoration and healing, right? So, here we are on Sunday, December 13th, third Sunday of Advent, Pink Candle Sunday, with one more Sunday in Advent to go until we're able to gather and celebrate the birth of the Christ child. The days are shorter, darkness comes earlier, the weather's unpredictable, and so we stay hunkered down inside instead of opening our doors and walking out in the cold winds and soaking up the winter sun. But that's just what this text is about and what it's asking of us. You say staying stuck doesn't allow for expansive love. This kind of love that an advisor, a peacemaker, a bringer of love will bring forth because of God's never-ending love for God's people. You might miss that radical love bringer if you are just doing the same old every week and living your life in kind of a rote sort of way. So, this week, we celebrate with Isaiah. We celebrate. Despite the terrors of the night, despite the leaders of the world whose actions are anything but loving, despite the political melee that we're experiencing that just churns all around us, despite the doubts that we have in this moment, we gather in love. Despite the horrors, the dangers, the distresses, the chaos. Because in the birth of the one foretold, we hear again a call to faith and acts of love that has always been there for God's people. God is love. Again and again. This year and next. No matter what we're doing or how we're doing it. So, how do we stay focused on love this week? Well, this is where I call upon the kids to help us out, because there's all sorts of ways that we can stay focused on love. But you got to help us, okay? Kids, you got to help us remember, because we adults are terrible at remembering sometimes. So, what I've got here this morning is I have got these little strips of paper. Got some green ones, and I've got some red ones. And what I've done, and what I want you to do, and you adults can do this too, by the way. What I want you to do is write down an act of love on a piece of paper. Like this. Like this one. Here's an act of love that happened. Mary showed me that she loved me by baking cookies. Okay? And I've got another one here that says, my friend showed me love by posting an old picture of my family on Christmas, and it was good memories. And so what I want you to do is I want you to take a piece of tape, and I want you to fold this over so you've got a circle, okay? And then you take the other piece and you do the same with it. And then what you do is anytime you remember an act of love, I want you to write it down on one of those strips of paper, and pretty soon you're going to have a lot of them. And I hope you do have a lot of them, because there's a lot of things that we can notice where people have shown us love. And then what we can do with it is we can put it on our tree at home, here at the church, and that will remind us of how important it is for us to show acts of love to other people. It keeps you attached to the love that is shown to us on Christmas.